everybody, welcome back to another episode of Gettin Buzz'd. I'm Dustin Brackett, CEO and founder of HIVE Digital Strategy. And with me as always is Michael Thebeau. He's our business development manager. And you got a pretty intense little fire going back there.
We're in Colorado, the winter's coming up, and it's time to crank up the virtual fire.
I like it. And so today we've actually got a special guest. Karen Jackson is with us. She's the Executive Director of Recruitment for Pepperdine University's Business School. Thanks for joining us, Karen.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, and the reason we have Karen on is we're going to be talking about enrollment marketing. We're kind of getting to that time of year that we're starting to think about, fall enrollment or spring enrollment and, all the different pieces that come with that. And what has it looked like this past summer and all of that with COVID, right? Like things have changed a lot and things were already changing quite a bit in education as far as enrollment goes anyway. So we're going to be kind of diving into what Karen's been able to do and some of her tips as far as, how do we get more butts in seats, right? Like even if they're virtual seats. But before we do that, the best part of the whole thing is day drinking, right? And so we're actually drinking something local. I am drinking Deer Hammer. It's a local Colorado gin. And it's
never heard of that.
Yeah, I hadn't either. I got it as a wedding gift, and it's kind of it's fruitier than like a normal gin. Like it doesn't have like the pine taste. So, yeah,
interesting.
Got a numbered bottle.
As a Colorado native, I'm going to be drinking Colorado Native, the Winterfest. Had never had it before, but I'm a big fan of Colorado Native, so I'll dive into that.
Nice.
I'm drinking sparkling water, cucumber melon.
Okay.
That's what I have.
The responsible adult, and I love that.
Awesome.
Perfect.
So kind of diving in to the topic, enrollment for higher ed has really changed a lot. And I mean, we also work with like charter schools and we see the same thing, that enrollment's getting more and more difficult, right? With all these different options out there and different avenues to learn. And one thing that Karen, you mentioned to us, like, as we were getting ready for this podcast, of like, actually Pepperdine's you've seen an increase, right? Like you've seen enrollment go up. And I'm super interested in that because that's not the trend for most, right? What do you think has been the cause of that, and how have you been able to actually still see that increase even with a pandemic?
Yeah, I actually think the pandemic helped a little bit for fall enrollment. Now we'll see what happens with spring, summer, and next fall if the trend continues. But at least for us, for graduate school business programs, I think the pandemic has been a catalyst for people to consider going back to school. If they're working from home, they have more time, they don't have to commute. If they're furloughed from their job, or if they unfortunately maybe left their job, this is a time where people are considering enhancing their skills, their credentials, so that they can get a better job or get employed again. So from that perspective, I think students were more interested, particularly this last fall, of going back to school.
That's interesting. I hadn't really considered that with the crazy jump in unemployment and like all of those things, that it is an opportunity as well, right? Like those people are taking this as, okay, how can I be better, and how can I get a better job? How has Pepperdine kind of leaned into that to say, hey, now's the time to get your graduate degree or whatever it may be?
Yeah, I think one of the things that Pepperdine does really well from a marketing perspective is leveraging our alumni. We have alumni that are very successful in different industries. And I think one of the reasons why students come to Pepperdine is to be a part of that community, which is then everlasting. So I know with our events in particular, we really leveraged our alumni, and we made sure that students understood that coming into this network, into this community, will not only give them, short-term success through their coursework, but long-term, because if something were to happen, you now have a network behind you that will help you in your career.
Have you
So
guys,
that's one of the things we've done.
now I know you've been kind of in this similar type of role at different places. Is that something that you feel like is unique to Pepperdine, or something that's kind of industry wide, leaning on their, alumni network so heavily?
I think other universities probably do engage their alumni, but I don't know if they do it during the recruitment phase, during the enrollment phase, I should say. I think we're really good at leveraging alumni from cradle to grave, so to speak.
Yeah.
That's kind of the industry. If you're in sales and marketing, you understand that industry term.
Right.
But from the initial contact with Pepperdine, our alumni many times are engaged in the process. We also, I think, do a really good job engaging our current students so that future students will have a good understanding of what they can expect. So doing that early in the process, at the very first event that they may attend, we are engaging our community members, because the fact of the matter is students want to hear from other students more than faculty and staff. Of course, we're going to say good things, but what are people saying that actually went through the program? So we try to give them that opportunity as soon as possible.
Well, and I think that's interesting. I think that a lot of universities, like you mentioned, like do some of that, right? Like from, even like on web page and things, there's quotes from students, or maybe like a video interview or something like that. But I don't know that they're like leveraging it the way that you are, as far as like actually getting those alumni in front of them and kind of shaking hands. And I mean, maybe not right now, but virtual shaking hands. To really give their firsthand knowledge of it. Because like you said, I mean, you're not going to come on here and say, oh, that was the worst program I've ever taken. But a student that felt that way would say something like that. And on the other side, they're also going to say, oh, that was the best decision I've ever made, right? And, here are all the things that I learned through it and the benefits that I got from it. And I think kind of getting that third person kind of perspective is super valuable. And you kind of mentioned that, like, from the first event, right? How have you kind of pivoted? Because I'm assuming that there aren't like big in-person events going on right now. How is that kind of evolved so that you can do some of that maybe remote or virtually or via Zoom or something like that?
Yeah, that was one of the biggest marketing changes we had to make, was our event management, changes, because Pepperdine's in Malibu. We have a gorgeous campus. It's one of the things that we promote quite heavily. And we always loved having events on campus, because I don't know if you've been to Malibu, but it's beautiful. I mean, you can see the ocean right from the campus. So it's stunning and it's beautiful. But we've had to move everything online. So one of the things that we did that I think has been helpful, that fits under the theme of engaging closely with current students and alumni, is we have coffee chats. So our students can log in for an hour during their lunchtime. They bring their coffee, whatever they want to do. But it's really intimate setting where they can ask a lot of questions and engage directly with our recruitment staff, but more importantly with our alumni and with current students. And we have those kind of events frequently. So we not only still have our larger events, but we also have more scaled down, really intimate events where there's a lot of Q&A involved for students.
That's great. And I think that one thing that we see with universities is that if you can get somebody kind of bought into the culture, or like identifying with, oh, I go to Pepperdine, right? Like then you've got them. Like they're they're emotionally invested in the school and that culture. So I think that that's a great idea, that if we can get them interacting with people, the more we can get them to do that, the more they're going to identify with it, right?
Right, right. And then we allow class visits, even virtual class visits, so that they can gain some insight on teaching methodology and delivery. And that's been helpful too. And then they have the opportunity to follow up with that particular faculty member if they have additional questions about course curriculum. So that's helpful too, that kind of brings them in. We call it that stitching them into the community sooner versus later. And then you start to identify yourself as a Pepperdine student, or
Right.
whatever university you're considering.
So what does that look like if I'm, a prospective student? Can I actually sit through like a regular class? Is that what and then you kind of see how the professor teaches and their methodology and what is this? Is it interesting?
Yeah, and we have different class topics within the business program, so they can choose. They can go to all of them, one or two of them.
Interesting.
And we encourage that because you want to see the different teaching styles.
Yeah.
I think there's a fear for adult learners going back to school. Like, can I do this? Am I going to like it? It's very expensive. They want to try before they buy if they can. And
Right.
this puts them at ease. Like, oh, I can do this. I can see myself here. That particular guy in the class has a similar background as me. I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's super interesting, super engaging. One of those things that when I went through my own college recruitment, right, being on campus was the part that sold me. And the way that you can do that virtually, I would have loved to have actually sat through a class and been like, oh, this is what college is like, or, something like that. But still being on campus, and now that you're not able to do that, I think you guys are doing a great job of engaging in the highest way.
Well, and I think that the barrier has been lowered, right? Like having the option to sit in on a Zoom class, or however you're doing it, a virtual class, like that's something I can do from my desk right here, right? I don't have to plan the whole day and I'm going to go for this tour and then I'm going to, sit in on a class in person. Like, I think that's really exciting, because then you can get more people, I would assume, to actually take advantage of that. And then it's the same kind of thing. Like they start to identify with, oh, hey, these people are my age, especially for adult learners, right? Like going back to school, that's a major challenge, because there's so many things, there's so many objections, right, to doing it. And just being able to get them to see, hey, like, you're not alone. Like, you're not jumping into a class with all 18-year-olds, right? That's not typically how it's going to look. And I think that getting them to see that is a huge step. Like, that's got to be a major indicator for you guys, that if we can get somebody to sit through a class, that person's much more likely to apply, right?
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
And so as kind of things have changed, over the last year, what have you done as far as like your recruitment piece? The adult learners, that's a major market that a lot of universities struggle with. Like, how do we reach them? How do we kind of convince them that this is the right path? And I mean, you mentioned like COVID's kind of pushed that, but how have you been, like, what has your outreach strategy been as far as like getting in front of people, getting them to kind of take advantage of that class visit and all of those things?
Our outreach strategy, aside from moving from more campus to virtual, hasn't changed a whole lot. We have touch points that are different and varied and specific to the student. Some students engage more, through email or text messages. Other students really want to get on the phone and ask a lot of questions. So we engage students in a manner that they are most comfortable with. That hasn't changed a whole lot. We still, our recruiters are required to make their outbound calls and to send emails. I think during COVID how do I want to say this? There's just so much going on. There's a higher level of advising and empathy, I think, and our students can feel that. And I know we have been really sensitive to what the needs are for people, and just really making sure that we're helping to solve whatever problems are going on for the student. A lot of them are financial, so making sure that we have increased the resources maybe that we can provide students during this difficult time. That's been really important as well. One of the things that we did with our scholarship process is we've implemented an appeal process, which we didn't have before. So students who may be having some financial difficulty, they can look and see what their merit award is. Many are very appreciative of it, but if you have said it's still not enough. So we put just a great streamlined process in place where if a student is in need, they can request additional funding. And that's been helpful too.
Yeah, that's great. And I think it's like the two sides of that coin, right? Like COVID has kind of pushed people to make some major life decisions. And one of those easily could be, I'm going to go back to school. I got laid off. I'm going to go get a better job than what I had before. But at the same time, like they just got laid off, right? Like they're very conscious of, hey, like I don't have that income coming in like I did before. Like, how do I manage this? So I think I think it's very smart to lean into, look, we know that you need to get this degree, but we also know that the financial piece is a big deal. And you mentioned it earlier, like this is not a small investment, right? This isn't something that you just do on a whim. And so like adding that appeal process, I think that's really cool. And I think that really shows that Pepperdine does care about the students, right? And you're invested in their success. And I think that empathy, like you mentioned, really resonates, especially right now when so many people are going through such tough times or weird times, something that none of us ever expected to happen in our lifetime.
Right. It's so true. Yeah, I think just our reps are so great to make themselves available to students. Our call times are probably a little different. We really try to make ourselves available later in the day. So if someone's working all day and they need to, they have a break at lunch or after work, we just want to make sure that someone's there to answer their call or their email.
That's great. And have you seen any shifts in like where your applicants are coming from, whether it's demographics or geography? Like, are you seeing any change with things being remote? And like, I mean, us in Colorado, technically we could be sitting on a class, right, at Pepperdine in Malibu.
Yeah.
I'd rather be in Malibu sitting in class, but.
Yeah, no, I mean, our full-time programs are heavily international students. So we have, just because there's been international students can't get into the country right now.
Right.
So that has been something that's been unfortunate and even confusing. It's created some confusion. The administration had one viewpoint or one kind of set of rules for our international students, and then they quickly pivoted to another set of rules. So it's just been somewhat confusing, but we have been able to retain some of our international students because we're online, and those students who are willing to study in that manner, that's fine. We want to be back on ground. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
So we're not really going to change too much how we deliver courses. We're hoping to be back on ground by summer of 21. So most of our students in our other programs are, they're in California. I think it's part-time programs, like 95%, I think, of our students are here in California because they have to go to campus. They have to come on campus. But we do have some online programs. And then, of course, for those programs, they can be anywhere.
Great. Yeah, I think that, the industry as a whole has started to see that decreasing enrollment, and it's a major issue that universities are really struggling with. So I think it's exciting to see, universities that kind of embrace the change and have really kind of pivoted to help those students, because I think that's what's ultimately going to win. And I think that, things are changing, and there are going to be pieces that, even when the pandemic's over and all of that, like naturally there are going to be pieces that just continue.
Yeah.
And I think that it's great that you guys have been able to pivot and make those adjustments so that new students do feel like they're still part of Pepperdine. And, even going through that recruitment process, like getting them ingrained in the community and in the culture, even though they can't be at the beautiful campus next to the beach.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I think that that's so understated. Just in general, the community that's what college is, right? Like, you have to resonate with your school and your peers and your classes and all of those things. And if you're not bought into it, you're not going to finish, or you're not going to show up that first day of school, right?
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, having the resources for students, because we don't just want them to enroll, we want them to graduate. So I know I don't work on this side, but our student affairs office is also really looking at innovative ways to make sure students have the support tools and resources while they're studying from home as well. So.
Well, and I think that that's also something that students are just very cognizant of now, right? Like, okay, if I wasn't planning on taking classes online. Okay, but if I have to take classes online, how am I going to do this? Because not everyone has a great space, right, to do that at home, or a great, situation to be working on that from home. So really focusing on that and helping students even get through this point. There are going to be plenty of students that are enrolled or just enrolling right now, and they're never going to take an online class again once this is over, but they've got to get through this piece, right?
Yeah, the Zoom fatigue is real. You're on Zoom all day or GoToMeeting or whatever your platform is to meet with people during the day. Our students are working professionals, so it's tough on them to be kind of online all day and then online for 2 or 3 hours during the week for class too. So just making sure it's engaging. The other thing really quick that we did from a marketing standpoint is partnering with organizations. Like, we partnered with the Impact 20 conference this year. They broke the Guinness Book of World Records for the number of attendees online during the week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool. Partnership. We partnered with LA Business Journal. So just making sure we align ourselves with other organizations that tap into business professionals that may be interested in going back to school. That's another thing that I think, been pretty strategic about under COVID. That's
great. Yeah, I think that, when you can find those really good partnerships during a weird time and partner with people or organizations that are going to do it well, I think that just reflects so well on the school. And so I think that that's also an area that I don't know that universities as a whole are doing enough of or doing that well at. And so I think, there's a lot of internal work for universities, but I think, building those partnerships can really expand the brand and kind of the overall perception of the university.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like your viewers now are going to look into the gin that you featured on,
right?
And the drink that Michael is featuring. You know what I mean? It's just, they're going to probably go online and check it out. So you tap into a whole new audience base when you partner with other organizations. So
absolutely. Well, I think that this has been great, and I think that it's really exciting for you and for Pepperdine that you have been able to be successful during this time, because it's definitely not the same for everyone. So congratulations to you for that.
Thank you.
It's great to hear of the the support behind the students, and still keeping the students as the number one. And I think that's sometimes something that can get lost. Especially as a university or a business or anyone is like, oh, I've got to scramble, right? Like, I wasn't planning for any of this, now I got to scramble, and then you kind of lose sight of who you're doing it for. But it doesn't sound like that's the case with Pepperdine, so that's great to hear.
Yeah, no, we've really tried to stay student-centric for sure.
And so kind of the last piece of this, you referenced the gin. So the last piece of the podcast is, how's the buzz? And so I've been drinking Deer Hammer gin. I don't know where it's from. It's in Colorado. But it's a Dutch style gin. I don't know what that means, but it is. And it's kind of fruitier. Like, it's like fruitier than like a normal gin. I get a lot of grief from like most of my friends that I drink an old man drink with gin. But it doesn't have the same kind of like piney taste. It's more of like a fruity gin, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's
good. I don't know.
I'm not a gin drinker myself, so I can't even imagine what like a fruitier gin tastes like, but sounds interesting.
Yeah.
On the back, I was reading the label earlier today, and it's got like all these like crazy like fruits in it, like juniper berries and coconut, grapefruit, mint and lime and hibiscus, like all kinds of stuff.
Sounds like they just grabbed anything off the shelf and threw it in and said, now we're making gin.
But that might be good with like grapefruit juice,
Right?
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, like ruby red grapefruit juice and that gin. That might be pretty tasty.
Huh.
Next week
That would
on
be
the
interesting.
podcast.
Next week, yeah. Mine was a heavier beer. It was the Winterfest beer from Colorado Native, and so we're recording this currently on a Monday afternoon. This certainly isn't a Monday beer for me. It's a weekend, I'm sitting in the hot tub and it's snowing around me kind of beer, but it's still good. Would recommend it if you like heavier stuff.
I do, actually. Yeah.
Oh. Well, it's only available in Colorado, so next time you come out to visit us, you can get it.
Okay. I have a friend in Denver, so I used to go to Colorado once a year, but I haven't been traveling as much, of course. So
makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, you twisted our arms. We'll come to Malibu.
Okay, you definitely have to come out to Malibu. It's gorgeous. I can't wait to be back on campus.
Jealous, yeah.
And so how's that cucumber melon sparkling water?
It's very refreshing. It's delicious.
There you go.
What is the brand? I've never even seen that before.
Soliel?
Yeah, I don't know if maybe they don't have it here. Maybe I just am not in tune with the sparkling beverage community.
Yeah, it's Northern California, Pleasanton, California is where it's from. I did try to find Denver, Colorado beverage, non-alcohol beverage, but I couldn't.
I don't think those exist.
Hard to get out there, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, but I tried.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Karen, so much for joining us. I think this was really insightful, and it's always interesting to learn about how people are adjusting during all of this and how universities are continuing to move forward, especially during times of decreased enrollment for most programs. So thanks for joining us. It was great to have you on.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Yeah.
And we'll have another episode coming up in a couple weeks. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Salud.